It is taking me a lot longer to finish this Code Geass video than I expected. So here's a quick video on The Last of Us. When The Last of Us came out back in 2013, it released a critical acclaim with an onslaught of praise from everyone who was playing it. Unfortunately, I had sold my PS3 at the time, so I wasn't able to play. Fast forward 7 years and now I have a PS4 Pro with a copy of The Last of Us Remastered. Before I'd even booted up the game, I was expecting to hate it. And that's because, over the years, I have grown a disdain for games that overly focus on being cinematic. Now, if you don't know, the developers behind The Last of Us, Naughty Dog, is also known for making the Uncharted games. When I had bought my PS4 Pro, I had also bought the Uncharted Collection, which holds the first 3 games in that franchise. The collection collected dust on my shelf for a couple years until I finally decided to play them. Or at least I tried. The Uncharted games are a prime example of a game being overly cinematic. It became very apparent to me while playing that Naughty Dog likes to prioritize story and spectacle over actual gameplay. Here's how. Uncharted has 3 pillars of gameplay: puzzles, traversal, and gunplay. The puzzle segments from what I've played are actually pretty alright, but the other 2/3 of the series, the shooting and traversing segments, are either boring or mediocre. Whenever the game asks you to traverse like the side of a mountain or a building, all you're really able to do is just press the analog stick in a single direction while watching Drake go in that direction. At times the game will maybe have like the pipe you're holding on to break so you slide down a bit, or maybe the platform you're on will like wobble and fall, but none of it actually adds to the gameplay. It's all spectacle, and Uncharted is full of gameplay elements like this. In my opinion, this is a very boring approach to game design. I understand now why so many prefer to call these games interactive movies. Over the years, I kept hearing how people would compare The Last of Us to Uncharted. I mean, they're made by the same developers, so it's not really surprising if they were similar in all their gaming aspects. So of course I never bothered to play it, but with the sequel coming out and having a lot of free time in quarantine, I said screw it and gave it a shot. With how long this game has been out, I surprisingly haven't been spoiled on much, just the game's prologue. I know the title of this video is literally called The Last of Us 7 Years Later, but if you're someone who doesn't want any story spoilers, even if it's just for the first 20 minutes of the game, then here's a timestamp to skip. Starting off as Joel's daughter Sarah and being able to see how everything went to shit from her perspective was a great idea. You start the game off with a cute cutscene that establishes the relationship between Joel and his daughter. Joel's a hardworking single dad, and Sarah's the type of girl to stay up late for her dad to come home so she can give her a watch for his birthday. Even from the get-go, the dialogue between these two is excellently written, as if it's an actual father and daughter talking to each other.
Where did you get the money for this?
Drugs. I sell hardcore drugs.
Oh, good. You started helping out with the mortgage then.
Yeah, you wish.
After being put to bed, Sarah wakes up to a call from Uncle Tommy. From this point forward, you control Sarah. You can go into Joel's room and see an explosion in the news that is also right outside the bedroom window, which I thought was a brilliant way to show the player just how close this threat is. You go downstairs to try and find Joel, and when you do, he shoots the neighbor. Then my favorite part is when Sarah, Joel, and Tommy are trying to get out of the city while you, the player, are able to move around in the car and look out at how the world around you is falling into chaos. I just wish that you were Sarah through the entire prologue because it's a little jarring how the game has you shift gears into playing Joel halfway through. The prologue ends with Sarah being shot and screaming in pain while she dies in Joel's arms. A bleak introduction and a great tone setter for what's to come. I have to admit, this might be one of the best video game introductions I've ever seen, and I've played a lot of games. It did still worry me, however, that I was beginning to become invested in a story that might be attached to a mediocre game. I also like how after the opening credits are over, you see Joel wake up with a text that says 20 years later. Like, wow. For the first hour after the prologue, the game forcibly has you slowly walking around to make sure you're taking in the environment and the exposition coming from your partner Tess. For the type of stories that Naughty Dog wants to tell, I understand the need to approach storytelling like this, but this is exactly what I was afraid of, having the player just meander. I just wish that I was doing something more meaningfully interactive. Luckily, as the game progresses, you'll be able to pretty much loot most environments, so whenever a character is spouting exposition or maybe some back and forth character dialogue, you're at least doing something. And credit where credit's due, the environments in this game are extremely well crafted with an immense level of detail. Whenever I walk into an abandoned store or home, it really does feel like these were environments that were once lived in and now have been taken back over by nature. It all looks really beautiful if you ask me. Though one thing I do have to criticize the environmental design is how it becomes painfully obvious when you're about to encounter enemies because of how conveniently placed the cover system is. I'm not a game designer, I don't know if there's like a better way to incorporate this into the environment, but this is not subtle. Besides walking and learning the run button, the game also had me move a shelf and had me set up a ladder. Yeah, for the first 40 minutes of this game, I was convinced that I was just going to have another Uncharted experience. But then I ran into my first group of infected. And then my first group of human enemies. And that's when I realized, this isn't Uncharted. The Last of Us is a game that has more of an emphasis on letting the player be stealthy. And before I get into that, I should mention the 4 enemy types that you'll fight throughout the game. You have other humans who will shoot and try to flank you whenever they have a chance. I really like how you can take a human enemy like as a shield, but if you're like out of ammo with the gun you're using, the other enemies will point it out through dialogue and like charge at you. I think that's like really cool. There's no bullets in here. There are runners who are slightly infected people who will just run right at you once they become aware of your presence. There are clickers, which is pretty much the main like zombie enemy type in this game. It's an enemy type that can't see, but it has excellent hearing, so if one audibly finds out where you are, you can't let a single one get close to you, or else it's game over. The last enemy type, and the one that you'll encounter the least, is bloaters. These are enemies that have become super infected over time and are therefore able to produce these like gross gas-like pus bombs and throw them at you. On the grounded difficulty, these enemies are particularly difficult to take out since it's pretty much an insta-death if you get caught in one of these. Besides a few bullshit moments, you could theoretically approach most enemy encounters by being stealthy, and if you'd rather go guns a-blazing, you could still do that too. This is a level of player choice that Uncharted just did not have. Something that's really cool that can only be done with a controller is that if you're trying to sneak by a clicker, you can't just press the analog stick all the way into one direction, or else you're going to be making noise. Instead, you have to lightly press on the analog stick to be quiet and sneak by. I didn't become aware of this mechanic until like a quarter into the game, which is why like if you watch me play it on my gaming channel, I'm like super frustrated for like the first couple parts because I'm like, why are they noticing me? I don't understand why I'm dying. But that was because I wasn't utilizing a tutorial that was like right there that was telling me, hey, you gotta just press lightly on the analog stick or else the clickers are gonna notice you, buddy. Naughty Dog would have benefited if they added more to the stealth element of gameplay, because all there really is for like distracting other enemies is like a brick or a glass bottle. That's about it. However, I do think the varying enemy types are enough to balance out the gameplay to make it more interesting so that like when the player encounters different areas, if it's all clickers, okay, you can be silent and just kind of sneak by. But as soon as a runner is introduced, well, now you gotta rethink your tactics. Though I wouldn't call it great, the gunplay is a lot of fun. Guns sound, look, and feel good to use, and with this being a survival game, you'll have to use your limited ammo accordingly. Well, sort of. Truthfully, if you're playing on the lower difficulties, you'll be given plenty of ammo. There's this mechanic where the game will recognize that the player's running low, and then will have the next enemy that they've killed drop the ammo to whatever gun they're using. This is why I would personally recommend trying out this game on the grounded difficulty. If you want the most intense experience with some actual challenge where ammo genuinely feels scarce, play on this mode. Side note, my personal favorite weapon is the crossbow because honestly that thing's kind of overpowered. It's a stealth weapon that you can use ammo, but then like the arrows you can pick back up so you didn't actually waste any ammo. It's a little overpowered. The story for The Last of Us is very straightforward. You eventually meet a girl named Ellie who is immune to the virus. Joel's goal is to take her to the Fireflies, a group of freedom fighters that believe that they can possibly construct a vaccine from Ellie's immunity. As cliche as it sounds, the real enjoyment of this game's story is not the destination, but the journey to get there. On your way to the Fireflies, you'll meet a cast of characters that individually isn't in the game for that long, but the time that they are, they're incredibly well utilized. Enjoyable interactions with characters that are just trying to survive just like you. There's no bad acting either. Every voice actor plus the motion capture gives a believable and compelling performance. The game's story uses these character relationships as a way to build off the main duo. Ellie is a wisecracking and curious teenage girl who constantly asks how the world used to be. Makes it almost impossible to hate her.
They sell ice cream out of the truck.
What? No way. Joel?
Yeah.
That's true. This thing would drive around and play real loud, creepy music, and kids would come running out to buy ice cream.
You're totally fucking with me.
Serious.
Man, you lived in a strange time.
Contrast that with Joel, who is now a broken man that knows exactly how horrible this world is, and he just pushes Ellie away at every turn. It makes their relationship that develops over time a tearjerker. Oh man, something I think is really great is I love how Joel will sometimes fidget with his watch whenever he's thinking about Sarah. The ending to the game is perfect. In fact, I almost wish Naughty Dog would have just let Joel and Ellie's story end here, and have the sequel follow a cast of entirely new characters. But hey, what are you gonna do? The remastered edition also comes with the Left Behind DLC, which is a nice short prequel story about Ellie and her friend, Riley. It also explains a missing plot point in the main game that I don't particularly think is a reasonable explanation. That's some professional stitching there, Ellie. I remember when the 2013 E3 demo for The Last of Us 2 started off with like Ellie making out with some girl, a lot of gamer bros got like really mad spouting the usual like reactionary homophobic rhetoric. force LGBT agenda, stop shoving gay shit down my throat, you know, the usual shit. The reason I'm bringing this up is because, well, The Last of Us 2 had some leaks, and there's a lot of people who are upset about it. Now, listen, I'm not going to spoil anything, of course, but I just want to say this. I did intentionally look at the leaks myself, and there's no way a person could judge the quality of the game, or even story for that matter, based off these leaks. You just can't. There's not enough here to make a full judgment. The game could come out and be total garbage, I don't know. But I just wanted to say that if you're feeling hesitant about the sequel because you're hearing about how many people are supposedly upset, I just want to let you know that a lot of these same people are the ones who got upset about Ellie kissing a girl in the E3 demo, even though she's been gay since 2013.
Ellie, you didn't ask for consent, that's fucking rape.
In conclusion, play The Last of Us. It's a fantastic game with an amazing story and a well balance between gameplay, cinematics, and it doesn't have an overabundance on spectacle like Uncharted. I, for one, am looking forward to the sequel. Hopefully it can deliver. If you want to watch me suck at playing video games, I have a gaming channel, or if you want to check out my art, I also have an Insta. All links are in the description. I'll see you guys in the next one.